Hello my friends, how are you? And it's ups and downs time again, so thank you so much everyone who is joining us, everyone who is commenting, everyone who is sharing, everyone who is subscribing. Folks, thank you so much. It's been such a wonderful couple of weeks now that Strange New Worlds has been back, seeing just people sharing their passion online again. It has been, honestly, it's been great. I have seen that some people are starting to pick up some of the merch, and that is so cool. And I'm not just saying, I mean, like, I love seeing people doing that. That is so much fun. We're a week out from Trek to Vegas. If you are going to be at the big convention in Vegas, please come up, say hello. I want to chat to you. I want to chat Star Trek with you. Bonus points as well if you're wearing one of our t-shirts. You're just the best. You're just the best. Love joining the premieres, love chatting to the people in the live chat. Yous really do make this a brilliant thing that we get to do. Like, every now and again I go, I get to talk about Star Trek. But on top of that, I get to talk about Star Trek with so many people. Sorry if I'm gushing now for a minute, but yeah, it's just been a lot of fun. Thank you so much everyone who has reached out on the various platforms, the various socials. Obviously, we're trying to do a little bit more stuff on our social media. So much of that is Ellie, folks. She is putting in so much work. Tom as well. And of course, everyone is working across the board. Did you know that Eddie, who edited this video as well as many others, actually hasn't slept since season 2? Eddie gets a good night's sleep every night. So yeah, let's talk about some Star Trek, will we? Yeah, okay. Ups and downs. Yes, what we're all here to do is go through all of the ups and downs for Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3, Episode 4, A Space Adventure Hour. I mean, we just kind of have to come straight through with an up, don't we? A Space Adventure Hour is not just the name of the episode, but it is also the name of this little-known television show that seems to have aired in the 1960s set in space. And this is one of those episodes where I would consider doing a Citation observations all the way through. But no, I'm going to hold off. I'm going to be good. I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to do that at the end.
Hi, I'm Duncan Rillick, no relation, and I collect relics from before the burn. Recently, I had a spot of bother with my website, Relics by Rillick. Some people in the Federation, the Klingon Empire, the Romulan Empire, the Cardassian Union, well, just about everybody, decided they didn't want their people to see my updates. How can I share my wonderful relics if certain territories block my site? Well, that's where Surfshark came to the rescue. Surfshark VPN offers more than 3,200 servers across 100 locations. So whether you're at the heart of Starfleet or on Cardassia Prime, you can see what you want to see. And their price is unbeatable. I should know, because I paid it. You can have all of this if you go to the link in the description of this video and use the code TrekCulture to get 4 extra months free when you sign up. Plus, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. Surfshark VPN lets you stay ahead of those pesky empires trying to block what we can see. You should stay ahead too. Don't be a relic, just trust Rillick. No relation.
But there's so much so obviously on show. I won't, however, lie to you. I had struggles with this episode. I did. I think I expected to love it a little bit more than I ended up loving it. So there's a spoiler straight away. Stick around, see why I'm saying that. It is an up that, I mean, just for the pure farce, like the piss take of the whole thing, that wasn't up, because the first time I saw that I was just giggling. Okay, I can see what you're doing here. This is ridiculous. Well, of course, we got this a little bit teased in the original trailer as well. You see Paul Wesley, Melissa Navia, and Jess Bush in this absolutely bizarre 1960s, 1950s almost retro, futuristic, Forbidden Planet, Lost in Space style getup. And it's just bonkers enough to me that it works. So many conventions are being shattered by this episode. So for example, we get this fun scene of Paul Wesley's character doing his very best Shatner. There's all that interaction. It's all played as if we're watching the episode, and then we get the opening the opening credits featuring the USS Adventure on their 84-month mission. And we do get an opening credits for that. But is this one of the first episodes of Star Trek overall that doesn't have a traditional opening credits scene? And I don't mean an opening credits scene that's been altered slightly. For example, those old scientists done in animation and Soul Space Rhapsody done in, a cappella. But I mean that, no, this doesn't feature, your cast and crew of the show we're watching. There are other variations on that. Season 3 of Picard was really just a title and an episode reveal, so I guess you could say there's precedent there as well. But this is something largely new for televised Star Trek. I do want to just, there's a couple of things I want to highlight in this scene. First is Melissa Navia as the Doctor, who is playing the role both as her kind of gruff McCoy-inspired way, but also quite disinterested in another way. Like she's doing it in such a way where you couldn't believe Lee Woods is so over filming this, and yet is also so bound to deliver the lines with the intensity as they should. I loved her. It's not that we get that much of it, but I loved her performance as the Doctor. I think I know from different interviews that she did not have a good time with that wig. So you know what? Fair play, Melissa. Fair play. Jess Bush. Take an up. But we need them for many science reasons. I mean, how many original series characters are being crammed into one in Adelaide Shaw's character here? It is ridiculous. We get, obviously, we hang a lampshade on it later on in the episode, but I mean, how short can a skirt get? All of which just lifted straight out of sci-fi from that era. Having Kira Goloian playing the Agonian, literally holding the stalks of the eyes, at once a tribute to, the puppetry of the original series, and also you can see a little bit of Kang and Kodos from The Simpsons in there. All the while going, what is going on here? What are we watching? But I tell you one thing we do know, above all else, is that someone is known for his diction. Hey, all right, for this, Paul Wesley, you're getting up for that. At the end of that A Space Adventure Hour opening credits, we're now in our episode of Strange New Worlds. And my brain did kind of go, oh, okay. Whew, we're here then. Grand. Okay, I'm not really sure what was happening. And Laan is recording her log. And it's revealed that while the Enterprise is, physically where it is to study a neutron star, the whole episode is, drum roll please, I don't know. It's our murder mystery episode. It's the Jonathan Frakes episode. It's the one that has been pretty hotly anticipated overall. So we've seen clips from the trailer as well. We know that there's going to be some detective shenanigans. We know there's going to be Spock in full uniform in said detective shenanigans. And a lot of it is really fun. This is an episode where switch your brain off in the beginning and just enjoy it. So there are bits that didn't work for me, I'm not gonna lie to you, but there's a lot of it that was just have fun with it. And I think for the most part I did. I like, for one thing, how they introduce what they're going to do. Because, one of the things that we theorized when we saw there was going to be something in the trailer about Holodeck, you're like, well, we all did the thing, okay, get out the calendar, went. Animated series, The Practical Joker, the recreation room was there in 1973. What's to say it wasn't there beforehand? Tying them in together, as Pike and Una both do, take it up. I like it. I like it a lot. This absolutely works for me. Doesn't hurt my head when it comes to the wibbly wobblies of everything. It's fine. And also, we're looking at something for a long-term solution for faster than light travel. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And there's something that Scotty says at the very end as well, which again works really, really well in the history of holodecks. Laan is going to be the guinea pig. She is going to wear a little monitor that's going to help this holodeck effectively design a program suited for her. Okay? You're going, Sean, what's the hesitation here? I'm like, all right, cool, that's kind of similar to another Holodeck episode, but okay, we'll see if that's the last time they sort of lean from other episodes. She goes to Spock's quarters, and first things first, she walks in, she'll be permitted in, and he is in the middle of a dance routine. He turns around and says, I have elected to do this instead of my morning calisthenics. There's no hint of an interrupted during, there's no kind of silly, you caught me doing something I shouldn't. I really like that. Let the man dance, taken up. That was really good. This scene between Laan and Spock, for about 95% of it, is excellent, and that's an up for me. I will discuss the other 5% later on in this video. Laan then goes to Scotty with this brainwave. She thinks of this series of detective novels starring Detective Amelia Moon that she used to read after she had been saved from the Gorn. She said she was just absolutely passionate about them, and she thinks they would be a fantastic template to build this holodeck program from. She goes to the science lab where she meets Scotty, who is just so much fun in every scene that he's in. This week's excuse for Carol Kane not being here is that Peli is on shore leave, and he says, but I can handle it. And handle it, to be fair to him, handle it he mostly does, to be fair. Yes, you know, they agree that, you know, the best way to build a good program would be to take a template that already exists, Amelia Moon, and then he comes up with the brainwave as well of using the templates of people from the transporter logs, which of course is our kind of clever way of getting our cast into our man Bishop, into a space adventure hour. And it's fun. It works. Look, it works for me. It's nice and simple. We don't overstir the pot. Everyone then gets to play on the holodeck. There's a little caveat added before Laan arrives that this is not just about recreating a story she's already read. This is about creating something that will challenge her. Does that sound familiar? She enters the holodeck and finds Spock there holding a pad. Now he says he's just there to create some final checks. She makes sure to say, well, don't tell Scotty that because he's going to take that personal. He's worked very, very hard on this. They start the program and we get something that bugged me. And it's a down. Let me explain my down. It's Spock saying, as my ancestor, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle would say, the game's afoot. This is a case of didn't need to be said. Since Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, there has been the long-running joke that Spock is a descendant of Sherlock Holmes. How could Spock be a descendant of Sherlock Holmes? Sherlock Holmes is a fictional character. So is Spock. Sorry to, you know, shock some people there. He says, as an ancestor of mine maintained, if you remove the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth, which is, of course, from the writings of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And so I've posited this online before, and people have pushed back and said, well. In my interview with Nicholas Meyer, who, you know, directed Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, and has written Sherlock Holmes novels, he said, yes, that was a gag. That was all that was meant to be. Here, explicitly confirming Spock is a descendant of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, presumably through his mother, possibly through his father. You know, we don't know what Sarek's family did if you go back far enough. I don't know. It just seems a bit like, could you not have just left that as a gag? That was a down for me. Across all of our regulars that we see in the holodeck play, you know, well, obviously, you know, our regulars are playing holodeck characters. I really like Celia Rose Gooding as Joni Gloss. I've been fortunate enough to be in some pretty bonkers rooms with people from all different types of industries. I've met agents like her. She just nails the character so perfectly. It's all about, you know, the big kind of swishy arms, but it's not about being ostentatious. It's about being in control, getting things done for your client, and sort of almost bulldozing your way through, but making sure, come on now, we're going to do this together. As Joni Gloss, Celia excels in this episode. We get the beginning of exposition from her, we get the setting, we very quickly learn that we're in Hollywood, we're in the 60s, we find out that, a studio owner has been murdered, his body's in the bath, there's scripts, there's ripped up contracts, there's a missing murder weapon, we've got all the ingredients you need for a murder mystery weekend. And I share Laan's excitement here. I love these kind of stories. And actually, have you ever been to a murder mystery evening? They're so much fun. I've been to one. It was great. It was in a house in the middle of nowhere in Ireland. No notes. Perfect. Laan, as Amelia Moon, goes down to begin her interrogation of all of the people who've assembled at the house of the murdered man. We have Sonny Lupino, played by Rebecca Romaine. We have Maxwell Saint, played by Paul Wesley. We have Adelaide Shaw, played by Jess Bush, using her natural Australian accent, which is so much fun. We have Joni Gloss, played by Celia Rose Gooding. We have Lee Woods, played by Melissa Navia. We have Anthony McBow, played by Babs Olusomakan. And we have TK Bellows, played by Anson Mount. We quickly learn that TK is the writer and creator of A Space Adventure Hour, the clip that we saw in the beginning of the episode, starring Maxwell Saint and also featuring Adelaide Shaw and Lee Woods. We then learn that it's being cancelled. TK, who is, kind of holding the whiskey as close as possible to his mouth, if not closer, is very, very shook by this. Saint is, why would they cancel us? Oh yes, ratings. And it's all a little bit familiar to those of us who know our Star Trek history. Straight away, fingers start being pointed all around the place. You did it! You did it! You did it! You did something on a Sunday! It's everyone out for themselves, and largely it works. Rebecca Romaine doesn't get an awful lot to do as Sonny Lupino in this episode, but yeah, do you know what? I really like it, because you can see sort of Lucille Ball inspiration, if not in terms of pure imagery, then certainly in terms of her impact on A Space Adventure Hour. Sonny, in her kind of great exposition dump, if you like, talks about how she saw something special in A Space Adventure Hour. She wanted to keep it going. She's invested so much in it. Although she was divorced from Tony Hart, the head of the studio, they both believe in the past. There's an awful lot of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz in what she was saying, and then boom, dead. Listen, don't drink from anything you didn't prepare yourself if you're in the middle of a murder mystery, as she learns to her detriment. And that's the end of Sonny Lupino. Thank you very much for playing the game. Not the last we see of Rebecca Romaine, but that's it for Sonny. We do get a great gag here, though, when they turn around to Lee Woods and say, "Lee, is she dead?" Who goes, "I'm an actor, not a doctor." Taken up. This causes Laan a little bit of hesitation, because she realizes she might be in a little bit over her head here, because the computer is learning as she is beginning to figure things out. So she elects to bring in some help in the form of Mr. Spock. So they begin an interrogation of the various survivors in the house. And we then get, listen, I'm saying this with love, but I have to down Babs's English accent. I mean, I was sitting there, I was drinking my coffee and I was like, okie dokie, yep, fair play, Babs. That was gas, is what it was. But also, he plays that sort of 60s life guru very well. Let's all do transcendental meditation and have a great time and remember what year we're set in and be like, oh, okay, a lot of people were doing some things, weren't they? There is one great little moment where someone, his name is McBowie over there. I loved that. Sort of reminding everyone that there is a real world out there. We cut back to the real world for a second, because poor old Scotty is trying his best to stay on top of everything, because this holodeck program is getting so complicated, it's beginning to sort of leak out into other systems. Before we get to Scotty, however, number one is in sickbay chatting away with Dr. Mbenga, and oh look, there's the character who was revealed online as being called Campbell. Sorry, it's gas. I will get over that, but yeah, Chris Myers, lots of fun. She says something that made me go, So there is a mild threat outside, and so they've already reinstated Ortegas. You'll remember that last week ended with that fantastic scene between Una and Ortegas, where she read her the riot act and said, right, for the next 2 weeks, you're off duty, you have to report to the warrant officer for chain of command training. And it was a powerful ending. I fully appreciate that it doesn't specifically say how much time has passed between 2 episodes, but for a throwaway line like, we've reinstated Ortegas, to which Omega goes, are you sure you can trust her? And Una just goes, absolutely. I'd rather they said nothing, or just have her back at her post again and we could just infer that 2 weeks have gone by. But they made such a point of it, it was a down for me. It just felt kind of awkward and out of place. Because it also doesn't really come up for the rest of the episode. Yes, she's at her posts, but kind of that's it. You know what I mean? So that to me was like unnecessary. Una goes and there's a little bit of riffing where, Scotty's like, yeah. Pelia keeps crap notes. Yes, she really keeps crap notes. And they sort of like, that's what you get for not being in the episode. Pelia, people will tease you behind your back. Back on the holodeck, you have Laan and Spock interrogating Maxwell Saint. Paul Wesley here walks, I think, a good line of open impersonation of William Shatner, because there is, if he is not 100% the inspiration for this character, he's certainly heavily implied. Now this version is, however, more of a playboy, so perhaps they left the Shatnerisms more for while he's performing a Space Adventure Hour. And he picks up on the relationship that seems to be burgeoning between Laan and Spock. You can see it, there's a moment of reaction and recognition there. And I do like it, that wasn't up from me, because obviously we know we're watching a holographic projection realize what's going on here, which means we're watching in real time the holodeck adapting to what it's discovering about Laan. This I liked. And also, I didn't like Maxwell Saint at all, and we're not meant to. So I really liked how Paul Wesley plays this. As much, almost, as I like Jess Bush in her interview as Adelaide Shaw. That is an up from me. This particular scene. And also, there is an exchange here where, they kind of talk about what was going on with Shaw, why she was in the tabloid rags, what was going on that might threaten her position on the show and everything. Yes, she might be in a relationship with someone, which in the 1960s, or the 2020s, tends to be headline news. She makes a great reference to the fact that, her lines and skirt were both getting shorter as the show went on. We're also told that the show is only 1 season so far, so that's a pretty quick development. But she does say one line, is it wrong to want love and to be taken seriously in your career? Taken up for the line. I don't love how the episode handles the theme of what she's saying very well, which of course I will come to, but the point stands, particularly when it's undercut with Spock immediately asking, what was the nature of your relationship with, or, why do you think that the tabloid, straight away his statement highlights exactly what she's saying here, that, she can't be taken seriously as both an actor and as somebody who just might want a personal life. I liked this. When they get to interviewing TK Bellows, who, obviously my gut says, oh, well, Gene Roddenberry then, right? Obviously, it could be inspired by so many different show creators. There is comedy here, of course there is, because, Anson plays him as this very weak-willed, very sort of, wouldn't say boo to a mouse kind of character, which is quite different from the Anson that we're used to seeing as Pike. And is in a way quite similar to the Anson we saw in the Elysian Kingdom. But this kind of this tortured artist, oh, good for Lee. Lee still working on that Western, referencing Lee Wood's attempt to be a writer as well. Just silly things like that. They just add a little bit to everything that's going on. I may not love the overall result of the episode, but there's so many little bits like this really stand out. Obviously that's an up for me, Anson and TK in this episode. I had a giggle. I did have a giggle at one point when the chandelier falls and, Spock pushes Laan out of the way and they're fine. And we as the audience see that she's cut her cheek. And I did have a giggle, not because I like seeing Christina Chong injured. I don't, just to be very clear about that. But from day one, you can't get the bloody holodeck safeties working, can you? Take it up. We come to what is easily my favorite scene of the episode, which is Scotty arriving on the bridge to talk to Uhura, taken up. So he comes in and Uhura spots him, and she comes over and he says, I have a hypothetical for you. And hypothetically, if something was running too much power, that hypothetically I maybe couldn't contact Laan. Hypothetically, I wonder how we would contact through. To which Uhura goes, okay, well, right, hypothetically, I guess we could try and patch something through this way. But it's as he's leaving, he turns around to go, none of that was hypothetical, by the way. To which Uhura goes, yeah, I got that pretty much instantly. This exchange is my Latinum up of the week. It's comedy done so well. I think it's so funny because they're not trying to be funny. Obviously they are, but you know what I mean? It's not like, haha, we will be silly and over the top. I once worked with a director who put it to me really, really well. She asked me, she said, Sean, why are clowns funny? And I went, well, people might argue they aren't very funny. And she smiled and she said, clowns are funny because they're not trying to be bad at what they do. They're trying to be good at what they do, but they're bad at doing it. And that's what makes it funny. So here, Scotty, who is trying to have a hypothetical conversation with Uhura, and she twigs it straight away, it just gets funnier and funnier as each line goes on. And I was just like, I could watch an episode of Scotty trying to hypothetically explain something to Uhura, who knows the full time what he's talking about. It was an absolute hoot. The upshot of that is that Laan is going to have to be the one who finishes this plot. Grand. Okay, cool. I think we all got there. That's fine. Back in the holodeck, Laan hasn't quite got there yet. Oh well. So we have some more bickering between the survivors and, it works for me. There's some good gags, which very obviously Easter eggs. But it leads up to this scene with the discovery of poor Lee's body. She's been stabbed. And Joni Gloss is the one to discover her again. So what's Joni doing around finding all of these bodies, eh? Bit suspicious, no? But Joni, being an amazing agent, is able to just be like, well, actually, da-da-da-da-da. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, fair. But I get to the scene where I struggle with, I think, not the most. One of the ones I struggle with the most in this episode. And it's the exposition here where Joni is absolutely talking about Star Trek. And I have written down in my notes here, how meta is too meta. When watching this, they are obviously making Star Trek, but they're not, because it's, done through the lens of fantasy, as we are explicitly told in the episode. We see the scene in the beginning of the episode, and again we see the bloopers in the end. Okay, pretty explicit, that's fine. And then, Joni sort of speaks of the message behind a space adventure hour. Take society today and explore issues through the lens of fantasy. Well, I mean, that has been said about Star Trek for years. And I will be honest, here in-house, we've even disagreed on this. I was inclined to give how on the nose this was a down. I won't lie to you, this was going to get a down from me. But I'm going to hold off, because I think it walks a razor fine line. Is it too much? Probably. Probably. Celia probably saves it from how she plays the scene. It's not that I don't want to talk about Star Trek in my Star Trek. It's like, Sean, pick an issue, will you? It's not that. It's that I don't want to have you reach through the lens, put your hands on either side of my face and say, did you get that we're talking about Star Trek? Which is what I got from this scene. As I say, I'm going to hold off the down only because I think Celia's performance saves it. One thing I am giving an absolute down to is the threat on board the ship. Didn't need it. So the neutron star is going to send out a pulse. We need to be able to ride the wave, the energy from the holodeck. Didn't need any of it. You could have just had all of the threat be the fact that Laan couldn't get out of the holodeck. All of it felt just superfluous to me. One thing I do love is that as Laan, who is the last person to Laan, this great detective, is the last person to figure out how she has to finish the holodeck program. I'm giving it a down. I'm giving it a down. I am. It's because I didn't give it down for the big Star Trek one, so I'm being brutal now. But it does lead to an absolutely hilarious scene. They find within the fake fire of the room that they're in this celluloid reel. It was discontinued in the 22nd century, some would say to the detriment of cinema. All right, Spock, you cinephile there, I see you. But as they watch it back, they're watching production on an episode of A Space Adventure Hour. You see TK, Bellows, and Saint almost coming to blows, but what you do get is Martin Quinn's version of Scotty. Oh my goodness. So the way Scotty is able to connect with Laan in the holodeck is basically inserting himself as a character in the projection. So what he does is, as they're watching this film reel, one of the stagehands brings a phone to TK, who seems very upset by what he heard over the phone. And then the stagehand turns around, and of course it's Scotty, who runs up to the camera and explains to Laan what she has to do to get out of there, and da-da-da-da. Absolute up. That's farce, that's silly, brilliant. As Laan and Spock are figuring out what's happening, TK Bellows walks in the room holding a gun. It looks like we've got our killer reveal. Well, actually, we don't, but we get a fierce red herring. He does even go so far as to shoot Spock. Nice little burst of green blood there, thank you very much, continuity. But he also exposes himself as a bit of a wimp. He didn't kill Lee. And he didn't kill Tony. He was just panicking over the fact that he was being fired, him personally, and he didn't take it very well. And yeah, I can imagine that when your name is all over something and you want it to go really well, and suddenly your name's being taken off it. Did you get that it's about Gene Roddenberry? Anyway, eventually, Laan figures it out. The one person who could have confused, bamboozled, and slipped around her was Spock. This has not been Spock for the whole episode. In fact, well, with caveat, the only Spock we've seen is that Spock that she danced with in the morning while wearing her monitor. The holodeck sensed how she felt about Spock and created this character around that. This one I'm downing. And I'm downing that because the episode stops to look you in the eye to make sure that you got that. It also feeds into, I don't end the episode on a down. So I want to go to my next down now, which is Spock and Laan and their pairing. We have spoken a lot on this channel about, the use of Spock, his emotions, love stories, and how we feel that it's being overdone. This is a great example of we have barely taken a breath from the entire shenanigans of Wedding Bell Blues, which could have been a bow to tie on the Spock-Christine love story, technically love triangle with T'Pring as well. Remember T'Pring? And now here you have Spock and Laan. My issue is it's been 5 minutes, and are we just going to do a love story with Spock every week? So I mentioned earlier on, of course, Adelaide Shaw saying, can't I have love and still be taken seriously in my career? And I feel that this line was put into this episode as almost a way of going, we're about to do this with Spock and Laan, please give us a break. That's what it feels like. And I'm not sure I'm gonna, if I'm honest. Going back to our retro ups and downs for Star Trek Into Darkness, which if you got a chance to watch it, I hope you did, you'll see that I've certainly softened on it over the years. And of course we come to the great scene where Zachary Quinto's Spock reacts to something bad at the end of the film. And why I felt that didn't work for me, because the power of a character who has such control over their emotions, which of course Spock has had since day one, even laughing, smiling Spock back in the cage was still a controlled being. Strange New Worlds in this season, more so than last season, although it was there in last season and the season before, seems to be going, who can we pair him up with next? Spock is this all-time sex symbol. Leonard Nimoy was, Zachary Quinto was, and is, Ethan Peck is. There are forums dedicated to Ethan's pecs. It is an established thing. I struggle with the fact that this character, with 60 years of examples of not having to go down the romance route or the, who can we ship him with next route, seems to be being relegated into these roles. The power of the body swap with Spock is you get to see Spock acting a little bit differently from normal. The power of, Spock becoming human is you really get to see Spock acting a bit differently. And these are isolated things. When it's every week, it loses any impact. It's a whopper of a down for me. And again, I've spoken about this on podcasts. I have no problem with Vulcans having sex whenever they want to. Let's just cards on the table. If Vulcans want to do, they're absolutely free. There's no issue with that. I have no problem with people not waiting until Pon farr, hello, Star Trek Enterprise exists. I'm just concerned that, knowing as well, that I won't say too much in case people, there is a hint of something maybe later on in this season as well that is probably going to knock Spock off any kind of logical, emotional path. And I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the use of the character. Now, I think I'm about 9 minutes into this monologue. And all of that to say, Laan and Spock falling into each other's arms at the end of the episode, it just feels... Why? Do we have to do this with a character we've just resolved another sort of love tryst with? Scotty, ask for help, will you? Love that exchange between number one and Scotty. Taken up. Love as well, Scotty's reasoning. He relied on somebody on the Star Diver and a few days later the Gorn invaded. I get this. I get this as a younger Scotty. I think they're doing a great job with him. Martin Quinn is doing a great performance as him as well. And up to Christina Chong. She is the life's blood of this episode, and I think she does a fantastic, she has so much fun switching between Laan and Amelia, and I had so much fun watching that as well. I love the hard-boiled detective, I love the slowly figuring things out, I just love how she sells it. I thought she was such a star player in this episode, and like I said, I don't like where we got to with Laan and Spock, but I do like their interactions. I think she works really, really well with Ethan Peck and with all of the other cast as well. I think it works really, really well. The last scene after the credits, well, the credits sort of begin rolling and we get that sort of blooper reel from A Space Adventure Hour. I thought at one point they were being a bit mean. Or when he tries to do the leg over the chair, which, sorry guys, I didn't think was that funny. I thought we did it in Those Old Scientists, and I thought it was much funnier then. When they do that, and then, scientists kind of storming around and having a tantrum and being a bit of an arsehole, really, I thought we're moved kind of past-ish. And I think it was a little bit mean. That's a down for me. But I said I wouldn't end on a down, and I'm not going to end on a down. I'm giving an absolute up to our vocal cameo from Jonathan Frakes, making this another Star Trek series that he appears in, kinda. And I love it. I love the fact that stagehand was clearly styled to look like Jonathan Frakes as well. So that was fun. Now, folks, after all of that, would you be an absolute dear and join me at Citation Observations? Well, I mean, Space Adventure Hour, obviously the original series, down to Chapel's outfit. I mean, the skirts get shorter, the lines get shorter. That itself could be a direct reference to Terry Garr in Assignment Earth, but so many of the characters in the original series. Kirk's outfit as well, the velour was everywhere. The earnest stances, Paul Wesley's stance, the way he looks, I mean, it's clearly William Shatner. So much known for his diction, are you kidding me? The bridge noises directly from the original series. The Agonian, probably based on the Baylock puppet, but could be any number of bug-eyed aliens as well. Space phone, absolutely love it. We can't give them our brain cells. We need our brains. Well, you know, if you're a Vulcan, you'll be fine without your brain, at least for a while. The screen at Chapel's station, you know, some of the graphics are off-center. Not that the original series graphics were off-center, because I'm not saying they were, but that idea of a sort of slap-and-dash 60s style. Just the wall ornamentation, for example. It's like those random bits stuck onto the walls of the original Enterprise. Absolutely love it. And of course, the wigs overall. Photonous beams, let's be real, this is just hilarious. Dramatic eye lighting as well, very much like Balance of Terror. 84-month mission, which is 7 years, by the way, for anyone who was counting. The USS Adventure. The whole opening thing is in the TOS font, which I just thought was hilarious. Lee Woods as the Doctor from, like, you know, the later season of the original series, when they finally did put DeForest Kelley in the opening credits. Talking about holodeck programs, well, I mean, the holodeck, of course, are you kidding me? The recreation room directly from the animated series episode, The Practical Joker. So yes, this room was on the Enterprise, and I like how they resolve it as well at the end. But they do talk about references to battle simulators on starbases. Well, sure, we saw that. Wrath of Khan, Kobayashi Maru, as well as many other examples as well. Let's not forget Coming of Age, that first season episode of The Next Generation. There's also, of course, the short trek Ask Not, which featured Anson Mount as Pike as well. In the science lab, there is an update on the Tucker tubes. So I was looking out for them, I was like, come on, they're in everything. So there is an update on them there. Nitpick, why update them? But sure, listen. Amelia Moon, who is definitely Jessica Fletcher, by the way. You know, wherever Amelia goes, death follows. Angela Lansbury, the Angel of Death. This was a small thing, it's not an Easter egg. I just like that Scotty calls her Lieutenant. It's always been a pronunciation. I grew up thinking that Lieutenant was the only pronunciation of that word because I watched Star Trek. And then, yeah, they say Lieutenant this side of the pond. Using the transporter patterns to build the characters, Armand Bashir, how are you getting on? Now, the yellow and black grid for the holodeck. Look, did they need to do it? No, because the recreation room doesn't have that. Did they do it because that's what it looked like in The Next Generation? Obviously, yes. I like that we got a little PSA in there as well. It is unwise to smoke in the confines of the holodeck. Or at all. Check you out, Healthy Spock. The reference I said earlier on to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which goes to at least the undiscovered country. So many visual like Easter eggs here to early Star Trek, but of course the type of the film studios, yeah. I enjoyed all of this. At one point, Amelia turns around to Joni and says, even you, William Morris. William Morris Agency was a 109-year tenured agency. It ran from 1898 until 2009 when it got absorbed into another entity. It was called the first great talent agency in show business, which I learned while researching for this episode. Max Factor Ruby Red was a shout out in this episode. Another example of product placement in Star Trek this year. We had Guinness in episode... We had what they called Guinness in episode 2, and we have Max Factor here. Interesting. No issue with that, just the fact that there's two so close together. Interesting. Sonny Lupino, to me, feels like a more than passing reference to Lucille Ball. Johnny Carson gets a name drop during the episode as well. Of course, he was one of the first great late night hosts. Late night. Absolutely nothing about that online at the moment, is there? NBC, the studio, gets a shout out as well. I'm an actor, not a doctor. A reference to Spock in a PJ party as well. Sure, we've had several references throughout Star Trek of their uniforms looking like pajamas. Were you sent from Central Casting? Are you a communist? All of these things have been leveled against Trek. A reference to cinema snobs. I mean, any one of the YouTube channels could be argued, accused of that, eh? There is a brief reference that Saint says that both he and Hart were having an affair with the same secretary. I would just say there's precedent for that in Star Trek and leave it at that. Some of the posters on the wall are hilarious as well. Like, for example, there's one set in Deadwood, which is the name of the town that the events of A Fistful of Datas take place in The Next Generation. I love those little nods to other holodeck episodes too. My lines and skirts were getting shorter. I mean, you could say that's a reference directly to Jolene Blaylock's tenure on Enterprise. She herself said, you can't substitute good story for tits and ass. Terry Garr spoke about how when she was in her costume fitting for Assignment Earth, basically they were in there going, make the dress shorter, make the dress shorter. Lee Woods is working on a script, a Western, well, Star Trek, it said, was always described to be Wagon Train to the Stars. Our fan base is small but passionate. I can think of no better description for Star Trek fans. The contract is set in Rosewood Avenue in West Hollywood. I did have a look. The address itself is it does seem to be a fictional address in case you were thinking of dropping by TK Bellow's house. Laan makes reference to the fact that many female screenwriters back in the 1960s would have to change their name to a male name just to be taken seriously. And, you know, such is why Dorothy Fontana often went by DC Fontana. This as well was mentioned in the DS9 episode, Far Beyond the Stars, with the character of Casey Hunter. One thing that I don't think is an Easter egg, but as soon as Laan realizes the holodeck safeties aren't working, she tries to leave. That's an up from me. That is definitely an up. I like that. Don't stick around and see, maybe we'll see how we get on. There's a good fight scene between TK Bellows and Maxwell Saint, where TK says, "You hate me and you hate that I gave you the best job you're ever gonna have." And it's funny because in a way, you know, TK Bellows of course being played by Anson Mount, Maxwell Saint being played by Paul Wesley. You could read that as this is Jeffrey Hunter fighting with William Shatner, and by Jeffrey Hunter not coming back to Star Trek after The Cage, William Shatner got the role of Kirk. Reading too much into it? Maybe. Could it also be Roddenberry fighting with Shatner? Roddenberry did give Shatner the role for which he is most known. There's also the fight as well. You know, at least I can deliver a line realistically. And he goes, "You know what's not realistic? A lady first officer." Well, unfortunately, the studio thought so as well when they brought the Cage to them, which is why they kept Spock. And what's the phrase? "I kept the alien and married the woman," Roddenberry said, which is why Majel Barrett was no longer #1 after The Cage. During Gloss's speech about not Star Trek, she says, "This will entertain people for generations." Digestible reflection of their own world through the lens of fantasy, social commentary with rubber masks and buried metaphors. It's Star Trek. When Spock is shot, we get the lovely green blood that pops out of his arm there. Very, very nice. Very, very nice. I do love as well when Scotty and Laan are giving their report at the end of the episode about whether or not to recommend the holodeck. They both say, "We don't recommend it," but Scotty does say, if you're going to, give it its own power source and give it its own server. I mean, straight away, you've got, that explains away the discrepancy, well, not discrepancy, but why, and we don't really see it again for a while, although it is there in the animated series, but also, as recently as Picard, we know that the holodeck is designed to serve as a lifeboat, if needs be, in terms of disaster, because it has its own power source and its own server. I like how they tie these things in. Reference back to the Star Diver as well. And then, of course, all of those gags in the end credits. You know, is this one of the first times we've had Jesus Christ said as an... No, because we had Sweet Jesus in First Contact. Ah, I like that. Okay. Leg over the chair, of course, Jonathan Frakes. Paul Wesley's face, of course, playing off Shatner. Baylock. Everybody lurch to the same side. We're doing this way, we're doing that way. Jonathan Frakes' vocal cameo. The original series theme. The doors not working. And the Egonian only in costume from the waist up. That is everything for our ups and downs this week, folks. What did you think? I would love to know. I would love to know. I think there's a lot to digest in here. For something that may have began as a bit of fun, I think there's kind of deeper things in there. Some positive, some negative, but plenty to talk about. So do let us know. Remember as well that we have our What the Hell Just Happened reaction videos. They drop on the days of airing. They are full of spoilers, so please be aware of that. We do mark that in the name of the video title as well. Folks, best way to stay up to date with all these episodes is watch them as they air over on Paramount Plus. You can sign up with the link in the description of this video. If you want to grab one of these t-shirts or one just like it, you can do so in the link just below the description of this video. We have options to keep everybody looking cool. At least I think they look cool. Folks, you are awesome. You are wonderful. To everyone who is going to Trek to Vegas next week, I look forward to seeing you. Please do come and say hi. I'd love to meet up. I'd love to have a chat. Until I talk to you again, look after yourselves, live long and prosper. Follow us on the various socials. We're at TrekCulture, we're at TrekCulture YT on Instagram. We are on Facebook now as well, which is our newest thing. We are there, so if you're on Facebook, give us a follow. I'm at Sean Ferrick on the various socials. Eddie, you're an absolute legend for editing this. We will give you 40 minutes of sleep this week. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm gonna grab a coffee and take a breath, and I'll chat to you soon. Thanks very much.